it can work in the choral class or any music setting because, what we do is teamwork. We're like a coach. And I used to try to use that analogy in the classroom, especially in my latter years, saying to the kids, just think of me as a coach. I'm on the sidelines and I'm coaching you through this. And once it's game day, which of course for us is foremost, I can't yell out to you the plays. I can't remind you about breath control or vowel alignment or intonation. You have to put all those things that we practice every day. Free throws, layups, passing the ball, dribbling the ball, just catching the ball. I mean, just fundamental things that I transferred over into music.
Welcome to the Choir Baton, a podcast designed to engage with people and stories, ideas, and inspirations stemming from choir. No other art form, no sport, no hobby, no business requires a group of people to execute a communal goal with just their voices. Join me, your host, Beth Philemon, as I interview guests who are singers, teacher conductors, instrumentalists, and community members. Together, we'll ask questions, seek understanding, and share insight from our experiences in life and in choir. Choir Baton, it is my pleasure to welcome to the podcast Mr. Marshall Butler. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Marshall and I, and it still sometimes feels weird to call you Marshall, because I'll probably bounce back and forth between Marshall and Mr. Butler throughout the interview, share a unique path through intertwinings of choral music together. When I was a high school student in choir, I had an amazing high school choral experience and was also so blessed to be in a county where there were other high schools that were also just having amazing choir experiences as well. I know not every city is lucky enough to have that. And one of those one of those high schools with an amazing choir was that of Sanderson High School with Mr. Butler. And we knew that when you saw those blue dresses come, you were going to hear amazing quality music. And fast forward just a couple of years, like 10 or something like that. And when Marshall retired, there was a bit of a transition there, but I eventually ended up teaching at Sanderson, which is like the biggest dream of a gig, and got to live literally in your footsteps for my last teaching placement. And so much so, I don't know if you know this, but aside from it being called the Marshall Butler Choir Room, I found a picture of you from a student, and it was like you holding the door open, welcoming kids into the classroom. And I had that picture on my office door. So when I was sitting So you're with me. When I was ever sitting at my desk, I could always see your picture. So it's hard following a legend, right? And I am just so grateful that legend was you, because you instilled such a love for choir music. But enough about me and me talking about you. Marshall Butler, how did you become a choir teacher?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I actually was a piano major, and I had no desire to teach. My initial plan was to become a studio musician. I wanted to play in the studio and just play for various artists and just kind of be in the background. But I was blessed to have an amazing choral director in college who inspired me, and having a good experience doing student teaching also kind of made me, I guess, aspire to teach.
Right. Wow. Okay. And so was your undergrad was it in piano performance or education?
It was in education.
Okay.
And of course, being a piano major, choir, general music was going to be your experience doing student teaching.
Right. Was Sanderson your first place that you started teaching at, or what was your first school?
My first school was at Rocky Mount Senior High School. which was an amazing experience, especially because it was my first teaching job, and to teach at a high school, as you well know, it's a little bit different from teaching middle school, junior high, or elementary school.
Right.
And I fortunately had the opportunity to meet my predecessor. He actually was retiring due to health issues, and he was just fabulous about bringing me and introducing me to each class that first day that I taught. And it was a good experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being in a small county where there was only one high school, where you could actually go talk to the superintendent without scheduling a meeting, just kind of walk in his office if he was available, and he knew you by name. That was really good.
Yeah. What is something that you think you really took away, really learned from that school experience?
My first teaching experience,
Yeah.
that it's okay to make a mistake. That it's okay to admit when you're alone. And, just being honest, I learned very early on that students would respect me more if I was just honest with them and let them know that this is my first time doing this, and we'll get together. And
Yeah.
it was good experience.
That authenticity, I think that you had then, I mean, is what you're known for to this day. It's the thread of your being.
Oh, you're so kind, Beth, but thank you.
Well, I mean it. I mean it. So from the Rocky Mount High School, then did you go to Sanderson, or was there a couple places in between?
Actually, when I first came to Wake County, I came through one of the optional schools. I don't know if you are familiar. They call them alternative schools.
Uh-huh.
And I came with the intention of I was burned out from, well, for one, driving 42 miles one way to work every day for 10 years. And my children were getting of age where I really need to be closer to home.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I worked from that March until the end of that school year. And then the Sanderson job came available. The person that was leaving the choral program there was going into administration. As a matter of fact, he left Sanderson and went to Leesley.
Was it Floyd Loman?
No, actually, his name was Anthony Jackson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He later went on to get into, I think he went to Durham School of the Arts, and from there he went to somewhere in Virginia. And he eventually became a superintendent.
Oh, wow.
But we had met prior through doing the choral camps at East Carolina, so that was kind of our connection there.
Yeah. And so what was that program like when you took it over? Because Sanderson's choir program has had a long tradition of excellence.
Did, and it's interesting you say that because before Tony, well, Mr. Jackson, Dr. Jackson, was Floyd Loman, and from what I understand, the kids loved him. And prior to his coming, I believe it was Gene Jurgen was actually my high school music teacher, and he was the person who inspired me to want to go to school and major music. So it was kind of ironic that I came to Sanderson, because I remember his first year at Sanderson, watching the program, going, "Wow, how amazing would it be to have a choral program like this?" And who knew, 10 years later, 9 years later, however long it was, that I would be there.
I have goosebumps. Small world. Small world. Well, tell us about, I mean, you were at Sanderson for 22 years?
I can't remember. I'm not sure if it was 22, 20, I think it was 24.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay. I mean, that tenure in a program and at one school is not something that we see these days, right? For a variety of reasons. What was that like? I mean, you built a dynasty when you were there.
Too kind, Beth. I Sanderson had a reputation prior to my coming. I joked about being there the longest of all of the, the previous teachers. However, I was very comfortable there, and I enjoyed the community because, as you know, Sanderson is a very unique school, and the community climate is very, very unique in that people, they more like a family. It was a much larger school than I came from. However, it was still very unique in the, like I said, the community feel. So I think probably that kept me there. I'm just being, satisfied, content. I enjoyed choral music, had no desire to want to go on to higher learning. Just enjoyed high school students. And I felt that connection. I felt like I could make a difference, truly make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. What's one of your most favorite memories from that time?
From Sanderson,
Sure, or any, but Sanderson right now maybe.
there's so many. I can't just name one.
But you can name as many as you want. I'd love to hear your stories.
I honestly just, I think, oh my gracious, this requires some thought. And being retired for a few years, I have to think a little harder. But just, I think there were many. One would be having the opportunity to teach my own child. My oldest daughter was in the choral with and that was, I think, pretty cool because that was her choice, her choosing. She sang in middle school, elementary school, and he decided after the first week of school at Sanderson that she wanted to do course, continue course. I think she had to see that her dad was cool.
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, that was one of the, I think, yeah, there's so many. Oh my gracious. Watching so many young people do so well in life, watching them come back. My favorite memories are students who desire to come back to visit. Those who wanted to just say thanks, or those who just want to talk to the kids and just say, hey, if you really, really want to do music, or you really, really are serious about committing to whatever your future is, you need to take it serious. And a lot of what they were saying were life lessons they learned in the classroom, and that made me feel good. But having the opportunity to bring in community members to speak to the students periodically, had several. There was a youth pastor, and I'm trying to think of his name. I can't believe Kurt Solomon. He's one of the coolest people I've ever met. I met him at a baccalaureate we had one year, and all the kids were like, Kurt, speak to me. And I was like, who's Kurt? When I saw this young man and then I heard his message, I saw why. So we developed a long-lasting relationship where he would come and he would do these they were, I wouldn't say denominational, they were more like just, he was just an awesome storyteller. And he could, I would say, I need you to talk to the kids about integrity. He could come in and talk to them without beating the Bible over their heads, and you could hear a pin drop. He was just so captivating. That's one of those times that I really, really enjoyed working with Sanderson, having that opportunity, having administration that supported the program. Oh my gracious. All of my memories, Beth, are going to be student focused. Nothing, no awards, no accolades. It was all about the kids. I think also having the opportunity to meet someone who came to me and offered to help financially assist students that were in need, like buying uniforms and just having parents who were always asking, what can I do? How can I help? Of course, sometimes parents can be, they mean well, because I'm a parent, and I used to tell parents all the time, I'm a parent first. So I recognize it. Some parents are I don't want to say zealous, that sounds condescending. They were eager to help.
Yes. Yeah. Balancing that is always fun. But to your point, right, you're a parent first, and I think both you felt that for your own kids, but the choir kids were your own kids, and you were a father figure for so many students that had father figures in their life, students that didn't have father figures in their life, students, like you were that parental person. And I think it's important to point out that from my understanding too, it wasn't that mom will let you do anything. Like there was some tough Marshall Butler love in there.
Oh yes, oh yes, yes. One of my favorite pins I remember on one of our trips, David Cole bought me. I remember he was a student, and it said that I yell because I care. I love that pin, and I used to wear it with pride because he totally got what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
One of my former colleagues had on when we started using email, and on what her tagline was: "Students don't care how much you know until they know you care, how much you care." And I asked her, I said, "Can I borrow that?" She said, "You can have it. I'm retired." So I tried to live by that. You know, kids really don't care how much you know. They really don't.
But it's that balance of tough love and also showing care.
Yeah, and I remember years ago having a student teacher who was phenomenal as a musician, but lacked the ability to connect with students. And so I remember asking him the question. I said, what's more important, the product or the process?" And he paused for a second. He said, "Product." And I said, "No, both. They both are equal." So you can have, these moments where kids can feel good. You can always, tell them how much you love them, and we can spend all of our time talking about emotions and not getting the work done. Or you can be a master, and and kids hate you, but produce this perfect product. Um, but at the end of the day, what have you done other than just produce a product? And students are more than a product.
Yeah. I One of the things that I loved is when I came into the position, there was someone in between, a couple people in between Marshall and I, one semester between when he retired and I started, and so the room was needed some organizing, and so I began to organize things and came across so many papers, tests, and you gave me a lot of organized tests and things that I use that attest to your process. I think that was one of the coolest things is the level that I saw of sight reading that you were having students do, the level of musicality, is also a testament though to your passion for the process to engage an amazing product as well. So hearing you talk about how they're both important, I mean, I have literally held the papers that show the evidence of the work that you've put in to do that. But would you share with us a little bit about, what your process is for developing that musicality that honors the process and the product?
I can't take credit for that. And once again, thank you. Just too kind with your accolades. But during my tenure in Rocky Mount, there was a famous basketball coach who had coached a couple of NBA players, and he was a legend. And he had retired, and they brought him back in out as a coach. And so I asked him that year that he took the team back over if I could just shadow him. So I shadowed him from the first day of tryouts until their first game. And I learned so much from him. The first thing I learned from him was to develop a mutual level of respect. Um, you have to insist on students respecting you, but at the same time, in no uncertain terms will you disrespect them. And that was the first thing I learned from him. It's just making sure that the kids know that you care about them. Because once they know that you care, I mean, for example, with him, he would say jump, and those boys would say how high. And that was because he showed them how much he loved them and how much he cared for them and how much Well, obviously he knew the game. He knew all this X and O's, but he had a passion for them. He wanted to know more about what they could do on the court. He could tell you about every boy that made that team, and even some of those who didn't make the team. And his process going from, like I said, the tryouts to that first game, I learned so much about teamwork and how much it can work in the choral class or any music setting, because what we do is teamwork. We're like a coach, and I used to try to use that analogy in the classroom, especially in my latter years, saying to the kids, just think of me as a coach. I'm on the sidelines and I'm coaching you through this. And once it's game day, which of course for us is foremost, I can't yell out to you the plays. I can't remind you about breath control or vowel alignment or intonation. You have to put all those things that we practice every day. And I'm going to go back using his comparison: free throws, layups, passing the ball, dribbling the ball, just catching the ball. I mean, just fundamental things that I transferred over into music. And trying to find a balance where I didn't spend the first 2 weeks of school trying to get the kids to sing in tune. However, defining what intonation was so that they would know, so they could kind of have some kind of bar as to, okay, this is where I need to get to. Once they understood what singing in tune was, then they could all work towards the same goal. Once again, it goes back to the teamwork. But as I said before, just watching him, I learned so much about respect and how to get respect, and how to receive it.
As a big basketball fan, I love that connection as well, and I do. I think there's so much we can learn from sports and athletics still. Now, I think there's a lot of athletics can learn from us, but I think that we, even down to game tape, right? Like watching game tape, so many different levels. I wonder if I could get Coach K to let me watch his process. Maybe not.
I understand that he's a good person. If you could get him to let you shadow,
Yeah.
he would be a good one to do.
Man, yeah.
But he's really tough, though. What someone's told me that they watched him, and he's really tough. Of course, you would know that during the game because that all of that led towards that particular game. So, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that this might be a controversial question? I don't know. Do you think that kids can handle the same level of toughness today that they could? Like, did you find yourself having to maybe adjust, or I don't know? I feel, yeah.
Good question. Good question. So, hopefully, I'm going to answer your question by saying this. The way I taught my last year at Sanderson, my teaching style, my method, my approach was quite different from what it was, say, maybe 10 years prior to that when my daughter was in school. And the way I taught when she was in school was very different from the way it was 10 years prior to that. So I think we have to change with the times. I don't think we need to lower our expectations. I think as one student, and I love to quote students, and I like to give people the credit. One student told me one time, she said, "No, you don't need to dumb down. We need to smart up." Was that not profound?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So to say that, to say discipline was always important. Teaching the kids discipline, but also getting them to understand with the newer generation, through my latter years, I found myself explaining to them the importance of discipline versus the years before, they figured it out throughout the process. This is why he did this. And so many kids came from so many different home lives and their circumstances. Um, I couldn't teach them the same way. As a matter of fact, I had to learn early on too. Once again, learn from the coach. You have to learn your players individually. What motivates them, what turns them off. And I can yell at Marshall, he'll respond well. But I may need to pull Beth aside and just kind of, you know, talk to her one-on-one, encourage her, find out why did she come to class today frowning, or why does she look like she's been crying? So I found myself taking time out, especially the latter part of my years teaching, spending time just one-on-one with kids. Just sometimes they just need someone to listen to. So yeah, the style was different. I had to learn to adjust, and I think all of us, and we're all lifelong learners. We have to learn too. But getting to know the students as individuals, I think, is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. I too found myself learning to diversify my approaches for certain students, because again, everyone is so different. And I think that at Sanderson particularly is one thing that I loved about being there, but was also a challenge, is that there was such a broad diversity of students at that school.
Oh yeah, and you know what? It's interesting you brought that up. I'm going to go back to the basketball analogy. It's easy to take um, 25 players who are, of the 25, 20 are All Americans, and create this amazing team. However, if you really want to see a good coach, let's watch this coach who has to go out and recruit, and he may not even have one star player, but has to teach them to be this one cohesive team, with the same goal in mind. To me, with teaching students, if you have a class of 30 students and none of them are soloists, I think I'd rather have a group of kids who can blend, who can sing as an ensemble, versus taking 30 soloists. 30 kids or 29 kids who all take voice lessons, who their voice teachers may have different philosophies on, vocal pedagogy, and try to teach them in a group setting. It's kind of, I think it's easier, but it also shows you what kind of teacher you are, what kind of coach you are, when you have to work, when you have to figure it out, instead of having players that are already talented.
1000%. I know during the last 10 years of your teaching experience, everyone experienced teaching continuing to get harder, and the expectations that are placed on teachers are harder. You mentioned when email became a thing, right? And I mean, I remember even as a teacher, when it wasn't the evolution of email, and just the 10 years that I've taught, right, where it was like barely used, you kind of didn't communicate to now it's, well, and particularly in the setting that we're using now. But teachers are continually put under incredibly stressful situations, and within the era that we are in now, where everyone is teaching in a different way, everyone is encountering different emotional expectations, family things as well. And I know you went through a lot of um, you know upheaval, right, with losing your wife, who I know was so meaningful, and important to you, and just health things. And I mean, you really went through a lot, Marshall. And I don't know how comfortable you feel sharing. It's whatever you feel comfortable with, but as someone that has really taught through personal challenges, what advice do you have for people that are going through the same, particularly where we're at right now in the world?
You know, I'm very private, and I would share more with my students in my classroom than I would with my colleagues. And I remember, um, trying to remember there. Oh, when and I don't know if you know, but I had cancer, and I remember, my booster president didn't know, and she said, "But my daughter told me she knew, but she didn't tell me." And the reason why is because when we talk, when I would communicate with the kids, I wanted them to understand some of the struggles that I was going through. Even, let me backtrack. The year my wife passed, I don't remember now. I think it was, I missed 30 days of class, and I remember sitting the sandpipers down in a circle. It was the day of our concert, at the end of the rehearsal, you know what, you guys, I don't know how many days I've missed, and one of the kids said he missed over 30. And I was just thanking them for their patience and all. But my reason for sharing that is they went through that year with me, but it also taught them this is how you deal with um, personal struggles and difficulties you may have in your life. Because the year prior to that, I lost my mom. The year before, I lost my wife. The year after, before my wife. And so, I also had two students that I can remember specifically. One, it was right before Christmas, literally the day of the Christmas concert. And another one, it was during the awards day ceremony, actually the day before the awards day ceremony. This child's mother passed, and her mom, they right before they sang for the awards day ceremony, the counselor walked up to me and whispered in my ear, this child's mom passed. And I just remember how I hurt for that child. This child lost her mom before I lost my mom. And she was with me during the time when I lost my mom, so she could empathize with me. Um, you know, watching these students lose their parents, but also seeing that, recognizing that music was something that they still could do and kind of distract them, if you will, from what they were dealing with at home. And I think, with that being said, my point is when, and right now with the difficulties that teachers I can't imagine are going through, I would think that if a teacher is struggling with um, being isolated or trying to figure out a new way of teaching, via Zoom or whatever format they use, um, just being honest with the kids and saying, this is difficult for me. How are you feeling? How do you feel about it? I think kids are more apt to open up versus, I'm always strong. You'll never see me weak. Um, when they see that vulnerability in you, I think that's when they become more open and candid regarding their own circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think if there's one thing that the past almost year now has taught us is the power of vulnerability, because at any point within this year we have all not been okay with the environment that we're in, and we all have a year like that from there, here and there, and we can assume that someone is having a rough time with something, but never have we all been going through as a world, right? Quite frankly, the same thing at the same time, and been able to be so sensitive to that. And I think, again, to your point, it's forced a lot of vulnerability out of us that needed to be. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's okay to say that you're sad. It's okay to say that you're angry. Um, Getting back to my own circumstances, watching how I responded, I think was most important for them to see how I handled circumstances, how I dealt with it. Um, Seeing me take off to go take my wife for her treatments, or seeing how I was sad some days, after I lost my mom or after I lost my wife. You know, just being able to share. I think once again, it makes them more open to just expressing themselves, because there are a lot of students that hold a lot of things in, as you well know, because they've been taught not to show emotion outward. That's a sign of weakness. When in fact, to me, it's a sign of strength that you are, and that you can hurt, that you are vulnerable, that you are sad,
Right.
that you're angry, that you're not sure how you're feeling today.
Absolutely. It's scary almost if you think about how much they really are watching and how much we really are always teaching, even when we are not teaching.
Hmm. You're watching. You're watching.
Yeah, as I think about this year, and think about, several different things. Marshall, I'm curious, you as a Black man in choral music, in education, and all this kind of stuff, I'm sure you felt that extra pressure as a teacher. I feel like race and color probably wasn't even talked about as much when you began teaching, or maybe it was, but I don't know if there's anything you would be willing to share about that perspective as well, too, with those that are listening.
Beth, I smile when you said that, because we're talking prior to everything that's just recently happened over the past 10 months. Um, I think back to the year when, what was the kid's name that was in Florida, Sanford? Um, Trayvon Martin, I think that was his name. We were actually in Orlando, or headed to Orlando when all that stuff. No, actually, we were down there that weekend when all that stuff happened. We were at a festival. And I remember we came back, and then just a series of things started to happen. Like, for some reason, I remember these names. I think the guy's name was Freddie Gray. He was killed in Baltimore, and that there was a riot following that. And I remember some of my students asking me in class, because I was very open about race in class, and we talked about that a lot. Because coming from a situation of a predominantly Black high school, well, let me rephrase that. The students I taught were majority Black in Rocky Mount. I saw a lot of things, going to festivals, and just, things happen. But I also had the opportunity to come to Sanderson, where it was reversed, where the majority of the students I taught were not African American or Black. Matter of fact, they weren't just white. You had, when I first got to Sanderson, there were a lot of Asian kids, a lot of Japanese students, a lot of Chinese students, a lot of Vietnamese students. Very, 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 very few Latino kids there, but it was just a nice variety of students. But I remember talking to the students during the course of the year, about equality, about just being willing to accept people and their differences. And I loved having the classes with a lot of ESL students, because back when I was at Sanderson, back in the the early 90s, and even during my daughter's years, the late 90s, we had a lot of ESL, because I think at that time, Sanderson and what's the school? I can't think of the name. The one that's over by State, Athens. We were the only two schools that had ESL programs. And so I actively went after the ESL students. And the teacher, she would openly just tell the kids, you can feel welcome. If you want to feel a community and feel welcome, you need to get indoors. And I remember having dialogue in classes where we would talk about stereotypes. And I'll never forget, in that particular class, I had some kids from West Africa, and we were asking, what are some of the stereotypical questions that you get asked? And of course, the white kids were surprised, like, people actually said that? And, of course, they said it, and they were looking at us. And I heard this 2 days ago. If I cut you and you cut me, we're both going to bleed the same color blood. Matter of fact, we may even have the same blood type. We may look different, but we have a lot of commonalities, if you will, between us. And getting back to the Freddie Gray thing, so I was so open about race in my class that I remember two of the kids, and they were white boys. They said, so Mr. B, what do you think about what's going on right now with all the police? A lot of the blacks were getting killed. They were saying that there was some brutality going on. And it was. I remember it was like one thing after the other. And I remember taking my glasses off, leaning forward on the piano, and I told them, I said, the only difference between now and 75 years ago is that you guys have social media. And I put my glasses on, started the class, and I saw one of the boys hunched over as if to say, I told you. And what I was sharing with them was that there's nothing that has happened in the past 10 months that has shocked me as being unbelievable, except the fact that it's still going on and that people have, just turned a blind eye to it. I'm sorry that so much has happened, but I am thankful that it's allowed dialogue. People are more open to talk about it. And some people have become more aware that maybe had no clue.
Right.
But yeah, I have to rely on my faith, and I have to believe that regardless where people come from, and I've taught kids from India, I've taught kids, as I said, from Africa, I taught kids from Asia, and their parents want the same thing for their kids that your parents wanted for you, that my parents wanted for me, and I want it for my children. No different. Their cultures may be different. And that's the other thing, learning people's cultures. And I remember learning that with my Filipino kids that you never touch their hair. That's insulting to them. And I learned that through the ESL teacher. And it's important to know that when you're dealing with people of different cultures. You don't want to assume what's okay with you is okay with them. So just recognizing people's differences and just,
Yeah. Listening, that vulnerability, listening to kids, being respectful of things. But you mentioned, that a driver in all of that is also your faith. And anyone that has worked with you knows how important that is to you, both in just, it often comes up in conversation, but also you just exude the spirit, if you will. And I think that then also feeds into the work you've done in church music ministry and how those two have perhaps fed each other.
Well, thank you. I give God the glory for that. In working in the school system, there have been times when Sanderson students have had the opportunity to come to my church where I was a minister of music at. And I would never want a kid to say, "You're a minister of music," or "You actually go to church," because of behavior or something that I said or did, towards a student. And granted, I'm not perfect. I've made a lot of mistakes, and
We all have.
ask for forgiveness. That's all we can do. But trying to be sincere, just try to be honest, and just open with people. It's so important.
How did you balance being a minister of music and also a choral director? I mean, so many of us have done that, are doing that, and Lord knows it's not easy.
Ooh, no. The biggest difference is remembering in church is worship. I can't say to a group of public school students that this song we're doing, How Lovely is Our Dwelling Place. I need you to just take yourself to a place of worship as you sing this. I can't use that analogy with them. It doesn't go over well, especially if someone is not a Christian faith.
Right.
Or any faith. But trying to, regardless of what young people's faith belief may be, I think the one thing that I found to be true is that any legitimate faith includes love and respect for others. Every Muslim student I've ever taught, every Jewish student I've ever taught, every Sikh student I've ever taught, we all came to that one common agreement, that it's about love and treating one another with mutual respect.
I love that. And again, a testament to what we do in the classroom, be it a church classroom or a community choir classroom or an actual classroom, the opportunity that we have as music educators to unite people with just their voices that are of all different faiths, backgrounds, nationalities, colors of skin, experience levels, languages I've got a lot of chill bumps tonight through this conversation, but it's true. It's just so exciting. well, I have to ask you, Marshall, what is one of your favorite pieces of repertoire to perform for students or with students, I guess?
Wow.
I know that's a big one. Doesn't
Oh,
have to be the one, but one of them you're like,
so many. I can't think of one.
oh, okay.
Gracious. Just coming from Christmas, um, I love Christmas music. As a matter of fact, my playlist for Christmas music, you're too young to know who the Carpenters are.
Are you I have the Carpenter's Christmas portrait book in my music room.
Okay, so if you are familiar with the Carpenters, their Christmas album, oh, from the overture, from the beginning to the last song with Karen Carpenter, that that oh my gracious, just
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
Merry
Um,
Christmas, darling. The
oh yeah,
Merry
oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Of course, the Messiah. I love the holiday chorus. There's so many other choruses. From a matter of fact, I'm the nerdy person I am. A few weeks ago, I was doing something. Oh, putting toys together for Christmas and for grandchildren, and listen to the entire Messiah. I had never listened to the entire Messiah before, and there were like three choruses. I was like, oh my God, how did I miss this? I'm glad I didn't know this before now because I would have been teaching this in high school. I would have taught this. I mean, it's just, but anyway, there's so many secular pieces that I enjoy too. But I think Christmas music was my favorite music because of the carols, the opportunity to sing so many a cappella pieces. Just, oh my gracious. I love Renaissance music. William Byrd's one of my favorite. Palestrina, I love Palestrina. Bach, my boy. Handel, my man. Oh my gracious. I just, Beethoven, he was my dude. And of course, with the 20th century, of course, they're the Eric Whitakers, they're the, oh my gracious, there's so many people I can name. And having the opportunity, I don't know if you're aware, but Moses Hogan was supposed to come to Sanderson before he died.
not know that.
Ye-
What?
Yes, 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 yes. And anyway, love his stuff. He was such a genuine, and it's crazy, Beth. I remember one time just emailing. I saw his email show up somewhere, and I emailed him, and he responded immediately, and he gave me his number, and we talked, and such a genuine person, just really extremely intelligent, but just very genuine. That's been my other experience. I've been blessed to be quite a few conductors and composers, contemporary composers and arrangers. And the one thing that I've noticed about all of the really, really talented ones, they were very humble, very appreciative, and just very kind human beings. Um, that's yeah, they all had that same character trait.
Well, I mean, this is gonna sound corny, but I mean it. It, like attracts like, and that is who you are, right? Like that is who you are as a person. And you have done so much for the choral community in Raleigh. Quite frankly, I mean, we didn't even jump into all of the other different things that you have been a part of. I know a big ACDA supporter person that's involved with ACDA on just so many levels, but authentic, genuine, willing to just take the time to sit with people and be real and hear their story and share yours is um, it's no surprise that you attract people like that.
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you. Thank you. I just really think that I've been blessed. I've had some opportunities, and I'm very thankful for those opportunities. Have you ever seen the movie Slumdog Millionaire?
I have, yeah.
Oh my gracious, that movie is the epitome, I think, of my life. All of my life experiences culminated to help me to, well, I won't say become, but attempt to become a kind person, or to try to teach music and teach it with a passion, not just teaching notes. just anyway, I'm just so thankful for all the experiences and people that I've met over the years, and you included. You included. And I really appreciate this opportunity.
Well, I am so grateful to you, for the time tonight that you've sat down with me and with the listeners, and then also just that transition, right, of teachers. And we were, although it was an unfortunate situation that there was someone between us, like it was, so we weren't direct predecessors. In my mind, we were. And I will never forget when we sat down in Panera together. Do you remember?
Dude.
And this is like my favorite. This is a great story to end on. So Marshall and I are in Panera. We're talking, I mean, just amazing advice, kudos of advice. And I'll never forget, we were sitting there, and a girl, I can't remember if she was working there or if she was just eating there, but she comes up and she goes, "Mr. B," and, like gives, and it's the epitome of Marshall Butler, of just the musical father figure that you were for that young lady, and you are for so many.
You're so kind. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, again, thank you for being with us today. And when we are back to non-restricted singing and worlds, I know you're always clinicking out and about in North Carolina. And if people are willing to pay your travel and all the things, I'm sure you'll go anywhere. Maybe.
I just enjoy people. I had an opportunity, oh my gracious, it's been a year ago now, this past summer, to shadow Eugene Rogers. I don't know if you know who he is. Mm-hmm. At University of Michigan, and his summer choral program, high school. Oh my God, this man was so good. And once again, it's having that passion. He spent his first rehearsal with his group. Because I wrote it down, 20 minutes getting to know all 30, however many students it was in that group person. Just getting to know them as individuals. And that said so much about him. I mean, he's obviously a phenomenal musician, extremely smart. But I learned that it's so important that people understand that you value them. But also, something I learned from him that I've tried to do ever since that moment was time, their time. He had an app on his phone that kept time. So he made sure he didn't go overtime with them to make sure they were willing to start class on time, because he wanted to let them go on time. And and memorizing music, having the music, doing your score study thoroughly. But once again, that's just the epitome of what good musicians should be doing anyway. So, it's still learning. I'm still learning. So much to learn.
I love it. Well, thank you for your time. I don't want to take any more of your time tonight as well. And I will be sure to include your email address if you're willing, if anyone wants to reach out to you and learn more. But again, thank you so much, Marshall.
Thank you.
Hey, Choir Baton listener. Thanks for checking out this episode of the Choir Baton podcast. And before you leave, I wanted to remind you of all the ways that you can connect with Choir Baton right now. You can follow us on Instagram, watch this interview on YouTube, and we're putting out more content on TikTok and Facebook as I speak. You can also always check us out at choirbaton.com. On choirbaton.com, you'll find information for how to join the Choir Baton teaching membership waiting list, or where to sign up for our newest online course, Revamp. The teaching membership provides teachers a framework and student-facing videos, worksheets, and assessments to how to teach choral music concepts related to musicianship. And Revamp is a 2-hour on-demand course with a 40-plus page workbook of frameworks and guides to help you revamp your outlook to both planning your time spent planning for rehearsals and your rehearsal itself. This course is the first of its kind for secondary music educators, and even though it's centered within the context of choral music, it's really applicable for any music educator. As always, thank you for being a part of More People Singing with Choir Baton.